Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of
the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome everyone into the Garden of Doom, and like I've promised you many times, we're going to go ever eastward, and in continuing with that, we are now venturing into India, and our guest today is Ajit Padmanabh. I hope I did that justice. He is a referral from Reverend Jim Willis, who's been on the show a couple times and will be again. So I send my regards out to the Willis family and thank them for this referral. And any friend of Jim's is a friend of mine and a friend of the show. So Ajit, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show, basically with no hesitation and no vetting. So how are you, and what's going on today?
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for the invite. I am absolutely in awe of Jim, and as you said, Jim's friends are mine as well. So it's wonderful to be here and wonderful to connect with your audience, Jeff. And it's been a great weekend, and I am looking forward to this discussion.
Great. Well, you sent me your bio, and before we get into you sort of telling folks about your history, etc., I just want to frame the show a little bit for the people. I was in search of someone for the Indian pantheon and mythology. Obviously, for those who need clarification, I don't mean North American First Nations or anything else. I mean India proper, where the sort of like the Kalis and the Vishnus and the Krishnas and the very colorful gods and goddesses with many arms and sometimes animal heads and often blue, and Mahabharata, which my understanding has depictions of almost like aliens waging Star Wars type battles in the skies with tanks on the ground. And if we have the opportunity, and I don't know that we will go into some of the tenets of Hinduism and maybe spiritual Hinduism, but that may be for another show. But before we get into all that, Ajit, please tell the folks just a little bit about yourself, whatever you feel they need to know to help them get in the frame of mind to say, yeah, I should listen to this guy.
Sure, wonderful. So I'm Ajit Padmanabh. I hail from Bangalore, which is in the southern area of India, the IT city or the Silicon City or whatever you want to call it. And yes, predictably, I finished my engineering and I joined an IT firm way back in 2003. And 18 years of work over there, traveling across Australia and other parts of the world, led me to believe that I need to do something on my own. So I started my own startup recently. It's a year old. It's called Who We Are, and it's about bringing in heritage and culture and arts into the modern world, right? So we leverage virtual reality and augmented reality technologies to recreate ancient sites and temples and give a temple walkthrough in the first person like a video game, and get them to understand more about the nuances of these sites, which are not only grand in texture and look and feel, but also in terms of the metaphysics and the depth of sciences involved. And so that's been my life mission now. Apart from that, I'm also into music. I compose instrumental music, and that's how Jim and I have been working together on some of his projects. So yeah, I mean, that's about myself, and I look forward to this conversation, Jeff.
All right, a completely different edge of the topic, but maybe related to what you just said. Are you going to do any work with Dhanush? And I think I'm saying it right, but he's a guy like Cher or Bono that only has one name, and I recently saw him in 2 movies, RRR on Netflix and The Gray Man, and he's a Tollywood, not Bollywood, but Tollywood action hero, maybe Bollywood also. And so, are you getting him into your VR?
Oh, I would love to. I mean, he's a legend over here, and I mean, I'm so happy that you're following folks like Dhanush and RRR and stuff like that. So I know it's made its mark in the world. So absolutely fantastic to hear that.
Yeah, no, I think that it's just a matter of time before he's called in for a casting call for a DC or a Marvel movie. Hopefully Marvel, because Marvel's the bomb and DC generally bomb in the bad way. But yeah, no, he's sometimes you see someone like the first time I saw Jet Li, and I'm like, this guy's gonna be a star, and yeah, he's got that star quality. So good for him. Anyway, so yeah, get him. You'll be big time. That's the big piece of advice. It's like you telling me, get Brad Pitt on your show, and it'll do well. Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
Awesome.
Really useful. All right, so take us, I guess in the 101 level, 10,000 foot primer. I guess maybe first tell what the word Vedic means. I'm not sure that everyone has heard the word Vedic. I'm not sure I heard it until about 2.5 years ago. And truly, I've been fascinated. I've just, with the show and who I book and where and guests beget guests, and I just haven't gotten there yet. But I've always promised the audience I'm going to go ever east, and I've tried to jumpstart that a few times, but I keep getting sucked back into the Near East or other parts of the world, because every place has fascinating stories. But yeah, what does Vedic refer to?
All right, so at the start, a disclaimer that I'm an outlier for anything related to heritage, history, arts, and culture. I mean, you would have figured out by my background. I'm not a degree or a certified laureate of history and arts and heritage. So whatever I will speak about is out of passion to learn and passion to seek what my roots are, right, and who I am instead of who we are, right. So Vedic, wow. So it's a broad terminology. I would like to think of it as a way of living that was back in the days of, there is a lot of debate whether this is a pre-glacial era that Vedas used to refer to, or a little bit after the Younger Dryas, right? So that is the kind of time frame that we are looking at. Mainstream history talks about it as 2000 BC and, later, which is a kind of a misplaced historical fact right now. So we are looking at pre-glacial or the Younger Dryas, right after glacial.
So pre-glacial would be what, like 13,000 AD?
12,960 and beyond.
Okay, and then Younger Dryas, so would be roughly, 12,000 years and closer?
It'll be around 8,000, 9,000 and 8,000 BC.
BC. So, yeah, so, okay, so...
both
10 or 11,000 years ago. I really find the BCAD thing to be something that is unhelpful, but that's what we're used to. So there we go. Especially how the years go down until you get to BC, then they start coming up. It's like we've changed how we count time, and I know the reasons why and how it got that way, and gee, that is power, isn't it? To actually change the way we count time. I don't know towards what end, but I still haven't quite figured out like what's the big deal in controlling calendars.
Recently, they've come out with a new nomenclature called Common Era, which is CE for short. And anything with BC is now called as BCE, before Common Era. And anything AD is Common Era. So if we even refer to it as BCE, it'll be the same numbers.
Right, but that's just changing the terminology. It's still counting. We're going, 1 through 2022 for, Common Era, and we're still, and still 300 BCE is still 2,300 years ago. I mean, again, I'm this is completely off topic. I just don't understand, the what is the end game of the power to say we are restarting time now? I mean, obviously, it does send the signal that the age of the Christian religion is how you count time and all that. I mean, I guess on some level that and controlling the calendar does impact our everyday life and sort of, I guess, it grounds you. But beyond that, I haven't quite figured out the, what influence it has. But that is completely different. In what little I know about the Vedas and the Vedic, I agree with you that they're much older than 4,000 years old.
Yeah, and also, we have to understand one thing, that Vedic life or the Vedas were, transmitted from generation to generation through listening, through oral communication. They were never written down, right? I mean, we like any other Native American tribe or even the Aboriginals in Australia, we were an oral tradition to start with, right? And the beauty about oral tradition is that even the Vedas, the way they are structured and the way they are taught Vedas, right? There are different kind of combinations and permutations of each of the syllables within each of these chants that when uttered incorrectly, another observer can make out that, there is a problem there, you've not uttered it correctly, so this is how you utter it. So the utterance is so perfect, I correlate that to the checksum error in computers, right? There is no way that there can be an error of the way you chant that, the verse, because of the intricate checks and balances within the Vedic way of teaching, right? Which, for me, it's a magnificent, ancient way of teaching and learning, right? Where, you've not written down anything. The only reference for you is your ear, right? The only reference for you is your ear for your listening as well as for your verification, right? And that, for me, is a fantastic way of, dissipating knowledge across tens of thousands of years, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the flip side of this is, because we've not had it written, the dating becomes erroneous, right? The dating of the ancientness of our civilization comes into question because, post Christianity, mainstream archaeologists, etc., they look for dated evidence in terms of manuscripts, books, stones, whatever it is, right? So that's the thing about Vedas. Another note about Vedas is, at a very high level, they were orally transmitted and they were tens of thousands of their branches, right? Only 3 or 4% of them remain today. And the story behind that is only these 3 or 4% are relevant for the way of living that we have for the last, 5,000 or 6,000 years.
Okay.
Right? And they were categorized by one rishi. His name is Vedavyas. He's also the author of the Mahabharata that you quoted previously. So Vedavyas, or his name was Krishna Dvaipana, right? And he took upon himself to not only document Mahabharata, which is kind of his family history, we will get into it in detail as we go on, right? At the same time, he took it upon himself to categorize all of these chants into different kinds of Vedas. So we have 4 Vedas thanks to this particular classifier, right? Before that, they were all combined, they were all together.
Right.
So we have 4 Vedas. One is Rig Veda, the other one is Yajur, the last one, the penultimate one is Atharva, and last one is Sama. Sama Veda has to do with music, right? Atharva Veda has to do with certain medicinal aspects of human life. Ayurveda is a subset of that. Yajur Veda is about rules and stuff, and Rig Veda is also about a lot of these living rules and societal rules and stuff like that. So that's how it's being classified. It's a very, very high level view. Just to note, it takes a lifetime to study at least one of these.
I'm hearing a little echo of myself sometimes. Not now, though. So, okay. So it's not happening all the time. Okay, good. All right. So this individual, so obviously named Krishna, is very famous. I assume this is the honorific or perhaps the direct relation to the Hare Krishna, which I'm 54 in a couple months. By the time this drops, I'll be, I might be 54. In the 70s, Hare Krishna was considered a cult and, sort of the butt of jokes and, airports and the movie Airplane and things like that. It actually is not classified as a cult. It's classified as a religious sect at this point, which is probably fair. Part of this show, especially with my original co-host, he was very into cults and we studied cults and we covered some. I was sort of surprised to learn Hare Krishna is not a cult. But when you see the definition of cult versus anything else is not particularly convincing if you really look at it. But it did make sense. Anyway, is there a direct relationship between that Krishna and Hare Krishna?
No, actually not a direct relationship. But there is a relationship. I'll tell you what the relationship is. The author of Mahabharata is Vedavyas. His name is Krishna Dvaipayana, right? And the divine avatar of Vishnu that takes birth during the Mahabharata times is
the
Lord Krishna.
Right.
And the movement of Hare Krishna was based on the Bhagavad Gita rendition by Lord Krishna during the Mahabharata war. Right, so there is a relation there, but these two are different personalities.
Okay, so it's like, Zeus is the king of the Greek gods, so the first person that wrote it was named himself Joe Zeus, and then somebody who had another religion or interpretation later on decided to name themselves Jeff Zeus and say everyone who follows me is a Jeff Zeusian. All right. Yeah.
Okay. No, these two are different personalities. They were part of the Mahabharata. In fact, the author's great-grandsons are the ones who actually fight the war.
Mm-hmm.
And in just before the battle, Lord Krishna, who's the deified form of Vishnu, he comes in and advises one of the Pandavas, who are the great-grandsons of Vedavyas.
Okay.
The author of that.
I think to best understand it, maybe it's probably best to start with the pantheon itself. So it sounds like the king of the gods, and there often is a king of the gods, is Lord Krishna. Is that correct?
So this is a bit. So in the Vedas, the king of gods is Indra, Indra, and Indra essentially means senses, right? So it is a parallel to draw that if you control your senses, you become the supreme, right? So Indra is also a parallel to Zeus because Indra also has a thunderbolt. He's also the rain god, and that kind of stuff.
So
Indra's...
we probably pronounce it here when it's anglicized as Indira, or we think but it's Indra, and Indra is the king of the gods, sort of your weather god, your everything that controls so that something can grow so you can eat.
Exactly. And Indira is the former Prime Minister of India, and that's a female gender name. That's spelled as Indira, while Indra is spelled as Indra.
Okay, so the I makes it feminized in this context. Okay, got it. All right, so Indra is the king of the gods, and then from there, who's Indra's queen or queens, and who are sort of the major gods, and then I think maybe if you could give physical descriptions of some of that would be great, because I mean, folks I think know this just through living, but the Indian gods and the Egyptian gods are sort of without peer in how elaborate and wonderful they look. I recently did a dive into the Canaanite gods, and they're also quite interesting to look at, but they're sort of almost like where the wild things are. They're sort of like, sort of scary and horrible and demonic, whereas the Indian gods and the Egyptian gods are, also beautiful and elaborate and well adorned and things like that. So, and oftentimes the Indian gods are blue, which is cool as well.
Right. So Indra's wife, to answer your question, her name is Sachi, and coincidentally, my mother's name is also Sachi.
Ah, well, there you go. So you're a demigod.
Yeah. So it's multiple lifetimes away, Jeff.
Right.
So apart from that, the more common gods, the Vedic gods, towards the initial part of it was more about Indra and a lot of these, demigods who were fighting battles and stuff like that. I need to put it in a very rude context, right? The mainstream gods that we follow today, part of the pantheon, right? We have Vishnu, who has these 10 avatars, one of which was Lord Krishna, who was in the Mahabharata, and the one before that was Lord Rama, who was part of the Ramayana. You would have read about these two epics. Right? So that's Vishnu. Part of the Trinity is Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma. Right? Shiva is it's a tattva, or it's an element, more to speak metaphorically. But in terms of a description, he's ridden with ash, and he's got a crescent moon on his forehead. He's got the river Ganges coming out of his locks, right? And he's got a snake around his neck. His throat is blue in color because he absorbs the poison of the world, which makes his throat go blue, right? And he's got a leopard or a tiger skin on his body. So that's his description. That is Shiva for you. In the Trinity concept, just to map it to the Christianity side of things, he's known as the god of destruction, right? Vishnu is the god of preservation, and Brahma is the god of creation, right? And the interesting part is each of them have a consort, right? So this is, very easy to understand. Let's take Brahma. He's the creator, right? And Brahma's wife is Saraswati, and she's the goddess of knowledge and music.
Okay.
So, for us to create anything in life, we need knowledge. So that's the kind of symbiosis that comes out in those two entities. Shiva's wife is Parvati. Parvati is also known as Shakti. You would have heard of these terms, right? Mm-hmm. For example, Shakti is the music trio of John McLaughlin and Zakir Hussain and all that, right? So Shiva is the destroyer, so therefore you need power to destroy, you need strength to destroy, and that's Parvati, that's the element, right? Lastly, Vishnu is the god of preservation, to protect, to preserve, and his wife is Lakshmi, and Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth, right? Wealth loosely would mean the wealth that we are used to, but it also means the under earth wealth of minerals and water and all of these things, because it is essential for our preservation, right?
Sure.
I mean, climate change is nothing but the destruction of these resources which we have to deal with, right? So this is the Trinity and their respective consorts, which is a very nice way of putting across this whole creation, preservation, destruction as a
cycle.
What do you say? A model, right?
Yeah.
So
a triangle, basically. Yeah. So with checks and balances, or a balance. Balance. That's the word I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
And okay, so who's the elephant?
Okay. Elephant. There's a very interesting story. So let's take Shiva and Parvati, right? So the story goes that Parvati was bathing, right? And Parvati's son is Ganesha. Ganesha was still with the human head. He was a normal human being, Ganesha. As a kid, he was just put outside the bathing area just so that, he kind of checks out if people are coming in or anything like that, right? Shiva approaches that area and Shiva says, I want to talk to my wife. Who the hell are you to stop me from talking to my wife, right? So Ganesha said, no, it's the orders of my mother and I'll have to stick to it. So this guy, in a fit of anger, he just chops his head, right? And then Parvati comes out of her bath and she meets her husband and she sees her son being decapitated there. And she curses Shiva and she says, I need my son to be alive. Go on the earth and get any head that you may get, right? Which is facing north. Okay, and that direction is very important. I will come back to that in a while. So Shiva goes in search in the forest and stuff and finds this elephant sleeping towards the north, right? Severs the head, places it on this particular kid, and that's how Ganesha was transmogrified into an elephant god.
The poor elephant lost his head, because I imagine that the kid retained the properties of his humanoid godhood, but and lost all the elephant.
The elephant was not lost. The elephant got salvation as a result of this. We call it moksha. And because you are decapitated by God himself, you get the ultimate remuneration for it.
Okay, so his sacrifice led to some gain. So good. Good for the elephant then. Before we get to north, what is the significance of the blue skin tone? I know that there's that the color blue rarely existed, and that the color blue paint didn't exist until something like the 1800s or something like that. Is that at all related? I know in some places purple was the color of royalty. What's the depiction of blue? Did someone just decide that that's so that there's no human that even remotely looks like blue, or what's up with blue?
Good question. And coming back to Krishna, Lord Krishna, the word actually means dark. It actually means black.
Okay.
So Krishna traditionally was darker complexion. If you look at a lot of us Indians, you'll find us, not even around the darker side of brown, right? So that's the kind of complexion that he is supposed to have had. Blue, to the best of my knowledge, I think it's been a neo concept, if I may say.
Okay.
Right? Because there are a lot of paintings of the 18th and the 17th century in India that depict them in the darker shades of, black. Darker shades of brown or gray or black, right? Blue seems to be a new concept, but I may be wrong there. It's something that I've not researched deeply.
Okay. Well, if you ever learn that it's something different, you'll let us know. But it sounds like maybe it was just a effort to maybe make it more politically correct before we had the term politically correct.
Make it maybe. Yeah, I agree.
Or maybe it looked prettier on canvases. I don't know. Or easier to discern features with a blue background than if you just do pitch black. All right. And then we have, so one that a goddess, I think, that is pretty well known is Kali with like 8 arms, something like that, with different swords or scimitars in each arm, depicted in the show American Gods as well. Is she the goddess of war, or who's Kali?
So Kali is an avatar of Parvati, Shiva's wife, right? And Kali is the ultimate destroyer.
Okay. So avatars are like if the god projects part of itself onto a human?
Exactly. Onto a human or any living conscious entity on planet Earth.
Okay, so...
And that's why his animal avatars also. See, initially, if you look at Vishnu's 10 avatars that have been there on this planet, it starts with the fish avatar, right? It moves into the tortoise avatar, and then it comes into wild boar, and then a lion, right? And then a short height human being, right? I don't want to call it a pygmy because that's a very sacred name, right? So a short height human being, and then followed by a warrior human, then a civilization city human, and then the avatar of Krishna, right? And then Buddha, which is Gautam Buddha, which is the Buddhism, the founder of Buddhism.
Right.
And eventually it'll end with avatar called Kalki, Kalki, which is yet to manifest. We are yet to see that. So if you look at the avatars from fish to tortoise, it gives you that evolution parallel as well. Starts in marine ecosystem and then moves to land. And then there's an evolution into mammal, which is the wild boar, right? From reptile to mammal, and then from mammal to the king of mammals, which is obviously your lion, and then into a human form. And human form also, it's very cool, right? You have a short human being. It could be the first in Africa. You never know, right? I mean, these are all conjures and stuff like that we put in. But this whole thing is so beautifully ordained, right? And each of them come with their own powers. In fact, my whole thing is to make these into games, right? For kids to understand. I mean, like Marvel has its own universe.
Mm-hmm.
We can have our own universe because all the scripts are there, all the storylines are there, all the wars are there, all the weapons are there, all the ammunitions are there. It's already, right? So, coming back to your question, this is the 10 avatars of Vishnu, right? Kali is the avatar of Parvati, as I said. An avatar is an instantiation. It is part of the power of the ultimate, of the supreme, that has to live through a human life on this planet, right? So he's not bereft of any problems or ill wills or manipulations or even politics, right? He is not bereft of it, right? He has to deal with it the way a human would deal with it, but it's just that he has an aura that will come out, to the personalities around him or her.
That is the description is amazing because this is thousands of years before Darwin, and not that this is exactly scientifically evolution, but symbolically it's not.
Symbolically it's close to it, and also it's not a signatory on evolution. It's not like evolution is correct. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because all these theories are bound to be questioned and stuff like that. But it's a very nice parallel. I mean, back in those days, just imagine creating something like this, and it's impossible to create this out of nowhere. It cannot be simply imagination. It has to be some basis, some foundational history or science behind it that they knew and they documented.
Yeah, I am. Listen, I'm obviously an amateur. Some people call me a researcher. I don't really think I am a researcher. I think I'm just an interviewer of researchers and people with knowledge. If that's research of a sort, fine, so be it. But I'm starting to develop this working theory. You know how there's linguistic families, and one is Indo-European, which is probably the most common language family on the world. In the world, Now, if it was it ever, I don't know. But between India and all the English-speaking countries in the world at this point, and the romanticized language or Roman languages, it's probably unquestionable. In any event, my working theory is that a lot of knowledge came through whoever it was who were the first people who took this spoken language and spread it. At some point, it became written language or languages, and I'm sure there were different interpretations. And I think that a lot of people when I say people, I mean researchers, people who write books, or you see on YouTube, they always act like serpents and dragons are the same things. I'm not convinced of that, but I'm not sure that it wasn't just a change in definition. That at one point it was serpent, and then when you got somewhere else, it became dragon, maybe because somebody stumbled upon a pterodactyl bones or something, which I think is very different. And I think there's a reason why the interpretation of a serpent is very different in sort of in Chinese and Japanese lore versus sort of European and Near Eastern lore. I hate the term Near Eastern because near to who, but for sake of this discussion, Near East is the Middle East as we know it today, which is stupid because it's not the Middle East. It's the Southwest East. I mean, it doesn't even make sense geographically.
It's an unlearning way to do, with respect to the maps itself now,
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
Everything is Eurocentric, and it just is, and everyone can have their own theories as to why. I mean, just because you can just say it was the dominant military, source for the last 2,500 years is probably a simple enough reason for the purposes of this show. In there, lost somewhere is a question as to the serpent. Does it have more of the divine connotation, or does it have more of the biblical reptilian scary connotation, or is it sort of in between where the Greeks have sort of the serpent is related to healing and things like that, but also the serpent, they can be the Hydra and Typhon, the Titan or the Gorgon that Zeus had to slay or whatever. Or is there more than one interpretation? Like, is the serpent even something of significance in Vedic culture?
Okay. Absolutely. And just before I come to the serpent symbology or the significance, a couple of points I'd like to make on the initial, the Vedic way of life that you asked. It just passed me right now that even before the avatars were documented, the Vedas were already in place, right? And one of the Vedas, the Rig Veda, the oldest one, as they say, that has documented, of course it's debatable, that has documented the migration of people from the Indian mainland westwards, right? And it's called the Out of India theory, OIT, debatable, and the proofs are being gathered as we speak. But it's very fascinating that these scriptures had multiple interpretations, not only for evoking divinities, but they also were talking about the migration of peoples. They were also talking about maths and science in these scriptures. So it's like, encoded language with multiple meanings, right? That's the kind of intelligence that these ancestors had of us, right? In that very notion, Rig Veda talks about 45 rivers in that part of the Asian subcontinent, the Asian continent, which is India, Pakistan, Afghanistan today, right? And each of them have been scientifically proven through oceanographic snippets, right? So fascinating, right? Back there, and you realize that these guys were not hunter-gatherers. These guys were knowing some stuff, and there is some astronomical reference also, the constellations and stuff like that. Yeah. I just wanted to touch that, and the second point is you brought about the Egyptian civilization in your discussion. Now, there is a very, very cool resemblance between the Vedic and the Egyptian civilization, in the sense that both of these civilizations had 7 founding fathers. So in the Vedic way of documentation, we refer to them as Sapta Rishi. Sapta means 7, like very much like Hepta in Greek.
Yep.
Right. Rishi is Rishi. Right. Sapta Rishi, 7 sages who kind of created this whole civilization. Right. And in the skies up, we have this Ursa Major, the constellation. We call that Sapta Rishi. So there is a star map to our storyline also. Very much similar to the Egyptian, star maps and stuff for that.
As above, so is below,
As
right?
above, so below. Absolutely, right? So these are the two, aspects that I just wanted to cover. This will be very, very, interesting and deep.
Is Ursa the same as the 7 sisters, the Pleiades, or is that something different?
Pleiades is something different. Pleiades has to do with the 7 wives of one particular rishi. And that's where, some of them are weak stars and some of them are strong stars. The story goes that the Rishi's favorites are stronger stars and, that kind of stuff. Pleiades is more of one sage having 7 wives, that kind of stuff.
Sure, it's like the old Western, a hokey song, the 7 brothers for 7 sisters or something like that, or 7 wives for 7 brothers.
Exactly.
But 7 is, 7 is significant.
Very significant.
All over the place. Lucky 7, yeah.
Yeah, even in numerology, it's the number of the moon. 2 and 7 are the number of the moon, and 1 and 4 is the number of the sun, right? So guys who are born on 2nd or 7th or any, summation dates thereafter, like 25th, for example, is a 7. They are the kind of people who are driven by the moon and stuff like that. So astrologically, you'll be mapped to one of the constellations or the stars that we have, right? I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the birth star and birth chart that we in India follow.
Nope.
No. So basically, the time when we are born on a particular day, that time is recorded and the star positions on that time, on that day is recorded.
Mm-hmm.
Based on the star positions, your birth chart is drafted. Okay, and these birth charts will have the, the kind of destiny that you will have, or the kind of future that you will have, or the kind of troubles that you will undergo, or the kind of successes you'll have. It is absolutely dependent on the star at the point of your birth, right?
In broad strokes, is this type of astrology similar to Western astrology, or is it sort of completely different?
It is similar in terms of 12 zodiac signs, but it is completely different in terms of digging those zodiac signs further down. Okay. So when I say star, a zodiac sign is a constellation, right? And constellation is a group of stars. So what our system is, it finds out that star at which we are born within that constellation, right? And we call that zodiac sign as a Rashi, R-A-S-H-I, right? It's a collection of stars. And we have a 27 star system, 27 nakshatra system, which decides the astrological boundaries of every personality, right? And our astrology, insofar as the 12 zodiac signs are concerned, are similar, but our astrology is focused more on the moon sign rather than on the sun sign.
Mm-hmm.
In Western astrology, it's sun sign Scorpio, and in Eastern astrology, it'll be moon sign Vrishchika, which is for Scorpio, right? For example, I am born on 2nd November, right? So my sun sign is Scorpio, but my birth chart, Rashi and sign is Leo.
Okay. Well, we're probably the same then, because I'm a Scorpio also.
Awesome, man.
I'm 11/11, so a lot of what you're saying applies to me as well. Yeah, I'm a double Scorpio, I guess. I don't know.
Awesome. So coming to the serpent now.
Yes.
You asked me about the serpent. So serpent, it's a fascinating thing. Of course, reptilian mind, everything is there. It's the basis, right? It's the foundation. The Vishnu avatar that I was telling you about, Vishnu sleeps on a serpentine bed. Okay? So you would have seen these reclining Vishnu images on the internet. Just Google them.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have a snake hood protecting him, right? Our scriptures, they talk about Vasuki, the serpent, which is the progenitor of a lot of these life forms. Okay, it's very similar to the aboriginal story of the snake creator, right? And serpent for us is both a reptilian manifestation in your brain as well as the energy line of our human body, right? The spine, your chakras, the serpentine, the flow of energy from bottom to top. All of that has a symbology of the serpents. And we have a class of devatas or class of gods, the pantheon that you spoke about. We have a pantheon called Nagas, Nagas. Nagas are essentially snake gods, right? So we believe in worshipping snake gods to rid us of our skin ailments. Okay? And that right now has a very, very scientific correlation also, right? I mean, snakes are known to shed their skin, etc., etc.
They molt.
And and snake medicines are shown to cure some skin-related ailments also. So it's a multi-dimensional interpretation for serpents, as you would have made out from now, right? There is this god, there is this god's bed being a snake. There's a whole pantheon of snake gods, and we believe that snakes are underground and underwater.
So the snakes do not get a bad rap. Snakes are venerated. The serpent is more venerated than feared.
So in Indic history or Indic philosophy, I don't call it mythology, Indic philosophy, Indic history, every organism is both bad and good. For example, Krishna, the one in the Mahabharata, Lord Krishna, right? He fights a snake from underwater because that is how to kill babies, right? So Krishna goes underwater, pulls out the snake and chops them, right? At the same time, Krishna's brother, who's Balaram, he's a form of a snake. He's an avatar of a snake, right? So we have both the veneration as well as the destruction, because that's how we have been built, right? So if, no thing is absolutely good and no thing is absolutely bad. It's a very simple philosophy that we follow.
That's sort of like the yin and yang. All that is good, all that is good has evil in it. All that is evil has good in it. So,
absolutely.
Right. Sort of like a Black Panther versus Killmonger, that kind of thing. Do you have an equivalent of angels and demons?
We do. And the demons are further subclassified. I'll just go into that. And these are a lot of myths that have been kind of perpetrated in the last 100 years, which are trying to slowly undo, right? So angels, we would loosely compare them with devatas, Devatas, right? Indra is a devata, for example, the god of thunder that we spoke about, god of rain, god of fertility, etc. And that we have a lot of devatas who are benevolent by nature, right? But at times become malevolent and they are punished by the Supreme accordingly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the devata side. So angels are not, completely angels. Again, it just goes to that duality thing, right? So these devatas are benevolent, but at times operate with malefic intent as well, right? Where they are rightly resurrected by the gods and supreme gods and stuff. So that is the devata, that is angel. Now demon, there are two subclassifications. One is Danava, D-A-N-A-V, and the other one is Daitya, D-A-I-T-Y-A. And the third one is Rakshasas, which you would have been very familiar with. I'm just thinking, Rakshasa is the most commonly used word for demons, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Devatas, Daityas, and Danavas came from one sage through three wives. Okay? One of the wives' name is Titi, and she gave rise to Devtas, if I'm right. And another wife named is Aditi, she gave rise to Danavas. And the last wife gave rise to Rakshasas. Okay? Rakshasa means literally protector. Raksh means protection. Okay? So Rakshasas were there to protect forests. They are forest dwellers. They are there to protect forests, right? So any civilized personality from the Indic history would go into forests to chop wood or whatever it is. Rakshasas would attack them. Why? Because that's their duty.
Right.
So they're not bad. They are just performing their duty as the civilization is performing its duty. Right? So that's about.
So they're less demon than they are protector of something in the natural world, which may be in conflict with something in the human world.
In the human world, yeah. And look at that, right? Back then we had Rakshasas, protector of forests, and now here we are trying to reclaim forests and stuff like that, right? I mean, the parallel is amazing.
But the angels are not, the warriors or the messengers of, say, Indra, and the demons are not sort of like the messengers or warriors of, some version of the devil. It's different. Yeah, exactly. It's more complicated than that.
We don't have that black and white. As I said, we have these elements within every personality. We have these elements within every god.
Okay.
Or a demi. Devtas that I took the example, they can be better classified as demigods, right?
Oh, that's good. That was one of my questions. Yeah, I mean, you said demigods earlier. So, is a demigod sort of the same, where a god, mates, procreates with a mortal human, whether it's the man with a human woman, or a mortal man with a deified female, and you come out with a demigod? Is it sort of the same thing, or is it something else?
No, it's not. A demigod is based on the powers that these people have. Mm-hmm. They cannot be born unnaturally or naturally, because for us, birth and death are just happenstance, right? I mean, even if you're born out of a devil and a god or whatever it is, you are born and you are a creation of the ultimate, right? So you have a life to live. Right?
So it's not a hybrid. It's just you have lesser powers or limited powers.
Are the ones who are equipped with lesser powers. They have to earn their powers, and they have to do good to earn their powers. And when they do bad, they lose their powers. So that's demigod.
Okay, so there's no like equivalent of Hercules or like the Nephilim in biblical. Okay, that's fine. That's cool. Do you have giants?
Giants, a lot of them.
Okay,
a lot of in Mahabharata itself, there are the one of the 5 brothers in Mahabharata, the one who actually waged the war and emerged victorious at the end of it, right? I mean, Mahabharata is a fight between brothers of the same clan, right? It's a war between brothers of the same clan. Mm-hmm. On one side, there are 100 brothers. On the other side, there are 5 brothers. 100 brothers have a lot of alliances across India. 5 brothers have a lot of alliances across India as well. So the war lasts for 18 days. And, at the result of it, the 5 brothers eventually come out victorious. It's the victory of dharma over, the victory of righteousness over evil, right? And the 100 brothers were a personification of evils or whatever it is, right? So one of the 5 brothers, his name was Bhima, Bhima. He himself was well built. He's supposed to be the avatar of wind, Vayu, and Vayu again is one of the devatas, one of the gods. Vayu is air, the element air, right? So Bhima, when he would go into forest, he would find these giants and he would chop them out, right? One of the giants turned out to be his wife, because she fell in love with him, and he said, okay, it's fine, you helped me over here, so let me be with you for some time, right? So that union gives rise to a giant who becomes this person's son, obviously, and he actually fights the war also. So these giants are like, you can easily call them around 40 to 50 feet tall. It's not more, And of course, I don't know, what kind of research will prove that they actually existed. Because the kind of civilization that we've had for the last so many centuries, the soil layer that we have to dig in to find such artifacts would be quite deep, right?
Sure.
So giants did exist, both good and bad. Again.
Okay, excellent. That's actually.
And also during the age of Mahabharata, or even earlier than that, even humans were taller than what we are. They are thought to be around 7 to 8 feet tall at least, and each of them lived at least 250 years of life.
No, that's a long time. Some of the equipment described in the Mahabharata, I mean, some describe the ground vehicles as almost like tanks or armored personnel carriers, and some of the aircraft, and it sounds like they were craft indeed, were almost like like ships you'd see in Star Wars or Battlestar Galactica. They were basically fighter jets, with power beams, and then of course some people have interpreted that to mean that there was nuclear weapons and whatever. I don't know if that's the case or not, but can you describe as best you can in as simple a terms as you can, like what was some of the equipment that was used? I've heard the word Vinay. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly. It sounds like a sci-fi epic going on here.
Absolutely. So there is a section dedicated in Mahabharata to the description of these weapons, right? And there are 3 steps. One is, how do you gain the weapons? What do you need to do to gain the weapons? What is the power of the weapon? And what's the misuse of the weapon? See, that's where we appreciate the philosophy aspect of our way of living, right? We understand that these weapons are there, but these are weapons of choice, and these cannot be weapons of emotion, right? Because there is an after effect that you will have to bear as a person who ejected these weapons. You will be liable for punishment, in whatever way, right? So the misuse part is already locked in terms of principles and ethics, right? Now, the kind of weapons they had, I was reading even yesterday. See, one of the weapons was voice controlled, in the sense that you could utter the name of your enemy, the one the weapon needs to attack, and the weapon will not only hear the name, it will also find that person in that whole war zone and chop him.
So, right? So it's basically voice guided to find the particular enemy. It's I thought you were going to tell me it's bonded to the user, but no, the user can have it directed, almost like laser guided, but it's going to it's attaching
it's voice command as well as the image recognition. Those kind of technologies combined into one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the weapon has to identify the person from just the name. So imagine the data that weapon had, that kind of stuff. So it's very similar to AI of today, maybe.
Right. So it's like an intelligent drone, basically.
Absolutely. So yeah.
In today's terms, I mean, who knows what it was, but in today's terms, you could say, drone, get Jeff Lippman. The thing, the computer picks up Jeff Lippman, images of Jeff Lippman. Maybe it asks you, Jeff Lippman in Baltimore or Jeff Lippman in Seattle. I don't know. There's not Jeff Lippman. Hopefully there's only me. But
so that's one kind of a weapon, which is voice controlled and target specific, visualized. The other one, which is the more popular one, it's called Brahmastra, and that is loosely compared to the nuclear weapon. Because in the Mahabharata also, the guy who wishes to use it, he's admonished, and he had a hole through his head. Coming out of the other end. It's like this, the x-axis of the head was kind of bored, right? So there was a very, very severe punishment, and there is no mechanism to undo once the Brahmastra is out. There are some chants or some words that you have to utter for these weapons to get active. Think of it as, codes and passwords and stuff like that in today's terminology, right? So that was the level of the weaponry back then. Brahmastra loosely compared to nuclear because of the power it has, because of the nature of impact that it can put in on planet Earth. Okay, the war zone, which is a place called Kurukshetra, which is even there today in the northern state of Haryana in India. Okay, Haryana is spelled Haryana.
Okay.
So this place exists there, and scientific studies have proven that there is some radioactive residues in there.
Really?
Yeah.
Like beyond what a normal reading would be?
Yeah. So radioactive residues, right? So that tells you that there is something that has gone in there, and the whole area is kind of barren, since nothing grows there, right? So we believe that it's not mythology. We believe that these events actually happened, and the fact that they've been documented, we call it our history. In fact, in Sanskrit language, it's called itihasa. Itihasa translates to history. So for us, these two epics are about human history in Indian subcontinent.
Yeah. And I'm not, and that's another point I wanted to bring up. I'm glad you brought up. Sanskrit is an Indian language, and I think most people think of it as being, biblical and Levantine or Canaanite, Hebrew, whatever, and Aramaic. No, it's not. It's an Indian language. And if I'm not mistaken, that the three wise men, at least one of them, was from India.
Yes. Yeah. And the wise men you're referring to are?
Well, to witness the birth of Christ or Mithras, take your pick, of which story you came. But now I've also heard that they're all Persian or depending, but I think the general parlance is that one came from Ethiopia, one came from like Babylon, and one came from further east, which had to be India.
Right. Yeah, anything, from India westwards towards Persia would have been of Indian descent.
Right.
Even your genetic mapping of today confirms that. If you look at your genetic, your rhesus factor and all those kind of genetic mapping, it's very clear that there is a parallel between the people migration as well as the Indo-European language existence. As you chart the path of Indo-European languages along the map, you'll see that the genetic mapping of each of those citizens are also very similar to the mapping in India.
Yeah, and I've had shows with J.P. Bristow from the Russian Empire podcast, and a couple of podcasts with Darius Kamali of the Persian version podcast, and we've done mapping of the Turkic peoples and the Iranic peoples, sort of indirectly the Hunnic peoples, and all pass through India, and then all or inevitably were intertwined. Again, I don't know what the chicken and egg is, who started what, and that's beyond my capability. But a lot of those cultures work their way up north into Ukraine, Russia, and and then ultimately even into Britain and down into North Africa and all around and back again. So it is very interesting. So I certainly suggest that people listen to those shows and just I'm not saying what to agree with. I'm just saying listen and check it all out. But there's a reason your linguistic families are called what they're called, and and I'm going to do a show at some point on linguistics with somebody who can do a better job of explaining the different linguistic families and how they're related, etc. And maybe that'll help me work out my theory, because this show is because I don't like to do my own research. So, I like to have smart people tell me what it is, so then I can pretend that my ideas are flushed out and are more than just, coincidences, that any stone 20-year-old in college can come up with. All right. I have one other, what I think is a trite question, although it's not going to sound like one. And then I want to get back to North, because we sort of left that pin hanging. And then I've got another question. But, I mean, is there in your histories a history, and Is there a version of heaven and hell, or is that also too simplistic?
In fact, there is no concept of heaven and hell. It came much later. I mean, when I say much later, I'm saying in the Vedic times, there was no mention of heaven or hell, and this has been debated enough, right? In the Mahabharata, there is a mention of an afterlife area which people get to, and thanks to the colonial translators that we had, they kind of mapped it to heaven and hell, and that stuck on. Right. So it's as simple as this. You be aware of the factor of karma, the way karma works, right? So the idea is this is your area in the universe where you have to live through your karmas, and you have to consume those karmas or expire those, right? In the sense, if you do good, you'll get good. If you do bad, you will face bad. Simple as that. In a very, very dichotomous narrative, that's what I can put it in. And there's absolutely no discussion about existence of heaven and hell in those termina. It's not like we have a hell where river Styx is flowing and there is fire and you're burnt inside a pond or whatever it is. No such descriptions exist. For us, it's a very, very karma-based weighing scale where, based on whatever you do, it comes back to you, right? So it's like a boomerang kind of a thing. What goes around comes around.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there is, as far as I have researched or I have known, there is no segregation between heaven and hell. Of course, there are terminologies which are equivalent to good abodes after death and bad abodes after death.
Right.
But it has nothing like the descriptions that are there in the Bible.
That's fine. Perfect. It's funny. I'm actually going back to something else that you mentioned before. When you talked about the basic story of the Mahabharata is that you have 5 brothers representing the righteous against 100 siblings. So it's sort of the underdogs maybe, prevailing. I have a colleague, I'll call him a friend, and he's actually going to be on a couple of episodes of my sister show, Garden Views. And his last name in his language, which I'm not even sure, his nationality is Afghanistan. Afghanistani. I'm not sure, I know that there's lots of different tribes, for lack of a better term. But anyway, he told me his last name means, his father told him that his last name basically means, is a reference to the valley of either the lion, but the story is that 5 brothers defeated a lion, something like that. And I said, that sort of sounds more like a metaphor to me. And he's like, huh, maybe. But it sounds to me like it's not terribly different than your story. You've got the 5 brothers, and while the lion is not 100 brothers, maybe the lion is, you'd still think one lion can take on 5 people. And I'm wondering if that's related at all, and that's how it got translated as it's made its way west. I'm not really asking you to speculate on that. This is just one of my little meanderings.
And for me to dig in.
Yeah. It's not, unfortunately, it's not going to be for him to dig in because, he's I'm not, well, maybe he's dug into it since. Anyway, I'll ask him when I have him on the show. All right. Back to North, way back when we were talking about, I think it was it Vishnu that we were talking about they got the elephant head?
Lord Ganesh over there, the elephant.
Right.
And the reason for the elephant head there.
Right. And you said North. Let's get back. You said North is very important. Let's get back to North. And we never quite did.
Yeah. Even today in India, when we sleep, right, our heads don't face north. Even today.
Okay.
And it's basically coming out of the fact that if you're directed at north, maybe you'll be chopped out, that kind of stuff. And north is also in terms of the vastu or the significance of the directional sciences, north, east, west, south, and upwards, right? North is the abode of Vishnu, which is the preservation abode, right? So you generally respected for the preservation side of it. Most of the houses are, east facing, because, if you're east facing, the sun travels through your house and not on top of your house to burn it, right? I mean, the kind of tropical areas that we live in, summer is significant, and so is winter. So we just need to be mindful of where we stay, and hence these rules, right? So north is a very significant direction in that sense. It's got, again, one good connotation, one bad connotation, right? Bad in terms of not sleeping, facing your head north. Good because it's the area of preservation. It's where Vishnu resides.
Do you think it has anything to do with the North Star being sort of like the guide star, the lodestar, so to speak? That it's, Polaris was there, and then before was Polaris. I think it was Vega. I'm not sure, but there's always been a North Star. Do you think that's why?
Of course, North Star is significant, and it's a very different story. So in our history, there is a story of a prince called Dhruva, who is a very, very ardent devotee, right? And who kind of serves his parents as well as God at a very young age. And he is kind of given this boon that after you die, you will get a star.
Which God?
And that star is Dhruva. This was from Vishnu.
Okay, so it's Vishnu. Okay.
It's Vishnu. So after he died, he became the pole star. So even in Sanskrit, we call it Dhruva Nakshatra. Dhruva means direction. The word Dhruva, the kid's name, actually means direction. And you translate that to the pole star. Even today, it's the guiding star, right? Okay. So, years ago, centuries ago, millennia ago, we were looking up at the stars to look at our life, to guide our life. And I think all of these stories were created just to make sense of the stars up above and to mark which one is important, which one is not, and create stories around that so that it can last. So North Star or Dhruva is completely different from this north direction. This story of north direction, that's a different story altogether.
So is it sort of like a sign of respect, almost subconscious, to not sleep with your head facing north?
Oh, could be.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I have another question. This may be completely outside of your wheelhouse, but I have a feeling not, because I don't. For someone who took some pains to say that they're not an expert, it sounds like you know a lot of everything, which I love, by the way. Okay, so you know that there's the Atlantis myth, which is everywhere now, but it's mostly a Western myth, and everyone wants to put Atlantis everywhere. But in the Atlantis story, before they ultimately lost to Athens, which I restate all the time because everyone's like, Atlantis was so far above us. Well, they lost a war to their children, basically, to Athens, so they weren't that far above us. But they also, even before that, they lost a war to a power in the East. So we don't know who that power in the East was. The East could have been, it could have been Troy, it could have been Babylon, it could have been Russia, it could have been India, it could have been anything. We don't know. But I've heard of at least 3 different Asia-based or close to Asia-based Atlantis-like places. And I'm not sure if any of them have any place in Vedic culture, the Mahabharata, or Indian culture, history, mythology, whatever, writ large. And I'm using the word mythology here because I'm not sure if this fits into history or not. So I'm using it out of ignorance. And those 3 are Tartaria, Hyboria, I think it's Hyboria or Hyperborea, but I think it's Hyboria, and Mu or Lemuria. Are any of those tied into Vedic or Indian culture, history writ large?
Right, so fantastic question.
And are they your Atlantis, I guess, if at all? I guess is the follow-up. Or do you have your own Atlantis? Or do you believe in Atlantis, I guess?
So, how do I start this? Hyperboreans, if I pick them up as a community, as a tribe, as a linguistic culture, there are hundreds of similarities between Indians and culturally and even in terms of migration or linguistically, all that kind of stuff. But that said, there are some interesting underwater kingdoms currently, which are in the Arabian Sea area or even in the Indian Ocean area. Right? Let me talk about two of them.
You're free to talk about any of them.
Yeah, one is off the coast of Gujarat, which is the westernmost state in India. Okay. And off the coast of it would be on the Arabian Sea, right? And that place is called Dwaraka, Dwaraka, and that is believed to be the kingdom of Krishna, the Lord Krishna, the Hare Krishna movement Krishna. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That is underwater, and there were some archaeological surveys undertaken underwater in the 80s and the 90s, and they did find some remains of a palace kind of a thing, which is having perfectly square edges and chiseled flat surfaces, etc., which has to be man-made. It cannot be natural. Right. So that is one underwater structure that apparently capsized much after the war. Right. The other area is down south in the Indian Ocean area. It's called Kumari Kand. Okay. And it's based on Tamil ancient literature. Tamil, as you know, it's the southern Indian language, is supposed to be one of the most ancient languages in the world. They had their own literature, their own stories, and they were called Sangam literature, Sangam. And in that Sangam literature, they are dated to various kinds of, before Common Era kind of periods, right? That text talks about an area called Kumari Kandam, which connected the southern tip of India to Madagascar on the west and to Australia on the east. So imagine the entire Indian Ocean area right now, which we call it as ocean, was this huge landmass, right? So a lot of correlations have been hypothesized with respect to Lemuria.
Yeah, that's basically the geographic span that often is Lemuria. I mean,
so for this landmass, it's been mapped to Lemuria and stuff like that. And it's fascinating because when I visited Australia, and this is something that you would ask your Australian friend also, the genetic mapping of the Aboriginal Australians has a link with the genetic map of Indians. I mean, if the ocean was there, migration was impossible across oceans. Migrations happen on land, right? Migration happened because we could walk 5,000 or 6,000 kilometers or miles or whatever. Mm-hmm. But the fact that there is this Aboriginal Australia, which is a 40,000-year-old civilization, right? They have their genetic markers very, very similar to what we have in India. Now that's fascinating. Now that would be a crude evidence of the existence of Lemuria, because unless that land existed, migration couldn't have happened. It's too vast an area, right? So, as far as Atlantis is concerned, I have seen the drawings. I think Plato talked about Atlantis, if I'm not wrong, and he'd drawn the Atlantis and stuff like that. We don't have a similar one in our history, but the closest that comes to mind is this place called Shambhala, Shangri-La, stuff like that, That's about it. But these are the underwater territories that we have, which are fascinating in their own historical relevance.
Of course. What's Shambhala?
Shambhala is the place where all of knowledge is sealed and all of knowledge is supposed to be located. Geographically, it is supposed to be in the Himalayas. Spiritual seekers are always on the lookout for this particular mythical area. The counter argument for the Shambhala is that Shambhala is within you. All the knowledge is within you as an individual. It's for you to seek, and it's for you to understand that that is the epitome of knowledge, which is always within you. Right? So either you look at it as an external world, a manifestation, or there's an inner world existence.
Okay. Within you is what
Within.
Okay.
Within itself.
It's okay. I was just, with your accent, which of course is your accent. I was trying to figure out the word, and so I just want to make sure I got it right. All right. You talk, and how about Tartarian? Is that any relationship to Indian history whatsoever?
I am unaware of the names, so it's my ignorance.
Wow, that's fine. I have all I know is that it's a word, and I think it's sort of more Russian, Eurasian, maybe Siberian. I'm not really sure. That'll be another adventure for me one day. But you seem to know a lot about Hyperborea, and if you could just maybe give us the 5-minute version of what your understanding of Hyperborea is, because I assure you it's more than mine.
All right. So Hyperboreans, there was a bunch of research that was undertaken in the Eastern European areas in terms of their languages, their customs, their way of speaking, etc. And with names also being very similar to our Sanskrit names, for example, right? So it was a linguistic research that was undertaken to look at the similarity between Hyperboreans and the Indic civilization.
So it was a real civilization.
Yeah.
Was it? But it was, I guess, more northern and a little bit more west. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's what even I am looking at. So it was East European and more towards the north.
Okay, so sort of like the Ural Mountains area.
Luton's side of things, yes.
Okay.
So let me dig that in, if you don't mind. Let me just look it up, because this was
no. Go ahead, Bill. And while you're doing that, so that we don't have dead air, I'm going to ask a question anyway. And I know this word is not, nobody likes to use this word anymore, but everyone knows what it means. So I'm going to use it with, and ask the pardon of, everyone in the audience who might be offended. But the word gypsies was incorrect. It's because the people who made that word thought the folks looked Egyptian, so that's what they call gypsies. It was a slight. And I know that the Romani people take offense because I guess that's where the highest population of what were known as gypsies lived. However, the origins of these folks was not in fact Egypt, but if I understand correctly, it was northern India. So is it perhaps that some of those people, instead of going straight west, they went north and formed Hyperborea?
Absolutely. So there was, based on the out of India theory, the migration of people. So we went in 3 directions. One was up north, west, and west through the southern tip of the Arabian Sea, etc. So we would have reached the present Middle East. We would have reached the Eastern Europe as well as the Ural side of Europe, the northern Europe.
And then possibly Australia.
Oh, yeah. I mean, conjecture, yes, yet to be proven. The thing with these, right, I mean, there is a sense of supremacy that comes about in that individual. And, we are the first civilization. We are the ones who, we came in here first, right? Now, in spirituality, that is called as the spiritual ego.
Yeah.
The way our society is built, and this is one of the reasons why we have to kind of talk this thing out in the modern world. We understate our history. We underplay our history just so that we don't kind of boss around and boss over the world saying that we are the first ones, etc., etc. At the same time, it looks like there was a lot of origin that happened from here, purely based on the genetic marker technology. Purely based on the genetic markers, right? Now, in the 40s and 50s, when we didn't have genetic markers or even the DNA being conceptualized, there was no way to prove these things, right? Now, at least we have a technology that can look at these migrations as a Indo-centric migration.
Well, anthropology is so far behind, and I'm not trying to poo-poo the out of India or the out of Africa, or there's even folks who argue that the first people were in Europe or Northern Europe. I don't know what anything is, and I will say no one does really. Anyway, I mean, even in the
truth is very deep. And truth has multiple facets. So there's no question of finding out that yes, this is it. There'll never be a this is it.
Right. I know at some point they thought they found a mitochondrial Eve I've heard both East Africa and West Africa. I accept that as possible, but the people, I use that term loosely, who came out were Homo erectus, so we wouldn't really recognize them as people. If they were sitting next to us, we'd probably be scared, or at least defensive. In any event, that's not my axe to grind.
Going back to the Hyperborean civilization.
Mm-hmm.
So what I was reading about, and this was a couple of years ago, it's a book by John Bennett. It's called The Hyperborean Origin of the Indo-European Culture. And there are a lot of mentions of the symbol swastika, which is the symbol of wellness and health in our community. And, if you tilt it, it becomes the Nazi symbol.
Right, not the Nazi symbol, and the more ancient Eastern symbol of, like you said, wellness, fertility.
Just a disclaimer, swastika has been a 10,000-year-old symbol for our civilization. And just because in the 40s there was some, one group of people who kind of adopted it and kind of modified it, if I may, right? And what Hitler would talk about is the
that's right. They perverted it. They twisted it completely.
Which is the I think which is the star of the tilted cross or whatever they wanted to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It was they have a lot of these crosses. Germany, Heinzer cross and some other crosses.
The Iron Cross.
Because that Hitler had, swastika is totally different from it. And swastika is a symbol of wellness and health, right? A lot of these swastika symbols were found in the Eastern European area and the North Europe area. In fact, even in Spain, they have found these symbols, right? So, which tells us that there could be a commonality in terms of knowledge dissipation, at least. Right? It could be because of trade during those times, anytime. So that's the link that I was reading about a lot of years back about the Hyperborean thing. And, there is this city called Arkaim in Russia, Arkaim, which is referred to as the swastika city. And the topology of that is supposed to be similar to Atlantis. Now, this is based on this book that I read 2-3 years back. I thought I would just dig in and give you the information that I had, little tiny bit of it.
Okay. So, while it may in fact be Indian influence, it is absolutely not part of the Vedic culture. So, but that's great. That's again, I'll dig into that at some point. And again, by dig in, I mean find somebody who wants to do an expose on it, and then a few months later find someone who wants to give a counter view of it, which is fine as well. All right. Is there anything else about the Vedas, the Mahabharata that's major, that the pantheon that I sort of cut you off, or that we didn't get to, that you think is important to talk about? We're definitely not going to be able to get to any Hinduism or anything like that today. That we don't obviously don't have time for that, which is cool because that's another show. If you're willing.
A couple of nuggets that I'll share, which is relevant to the present times. Let me take the example of Ramayana, then I'll come to Mahabharata. Right? Ramayana is the other epic I was talking about. So in Ramayana, there is this story of the princess being abducted by Ravan, who was the king of Lanka back then, right? And Lanka was replete with gold and wealth and stuff like that, and he had this sensory attraction towards Sita, who was the princess who was the wife of Ram, right? So be that as it may, in Ramayana, when Sita is kidnapped, Rama finds an army of what we call as Vanaras, or the forest dwellers, right? And they were half monkey, half human. Okay? So they were given the task to go around the world in search of Sita because they didn't know where she was, right? So that whole world journey is described in detail in Ramayana, and research and a lot of these documentation that have been uncovered, a lot of references are to with the northern lights that they spot. You know, they spot something that is hazy and green up north, right? And there are a lot of flora, the plantations in certain countries that are unique today, which are depicted in that particular journey that these guys take around the world to find where Sita is eventually. So I think that, I mean, if you look at it from a 10,000-year perspective, it's huge to be able to map these things out quite accurately with substantiated evidence as of today, right? As against just creating a work of fiction and saying that, you know, this used to be blue, this used to be yellow and white and stuff like that. So that, for me, is a very interesting aspect of Indian history and civilization that I'm very, very close to, right? To understand how these guys were back then, you know, how were they able to travel all over? And how were they able to see these things and actually document them for us to read it today, right? That is one instance. The second instance is Mahabharata, which is the fight between the two brother kind of communities, right? The 5 brothers versus the 100 brothers, right? Now, in philosophy, you know, Ramayana is a fight between 2 nations. Mahabharata is a fight between 2 brothers in the same family. And the next epic would be a fight within oneself, you know, and that's what I think is kind of playing out in the current times. You know, all of us are looking out, seeking out what am I here for, who am I, etc., right? And I think that is the battle that we are doing or fighting within, which will be the culmination of the next.
Oh, I think that's pretty clear that that is the eternal struggle within and without. But yeah, that's fascinating, especially that story. I mean, I never heard that of the sort of the half monkey, half human, which is it's interesting because this might not be related at all. It could be, you know, it could be the Homo erectus. But there's in the last 10 years they found something. I think it's called Homo naleda, which literally were upright creatures that basically had the torsos and skulls closer to a chimpanzee's, but the legs, of more of a human, that they were bipedal but also could live in the trees. It literally sounds like half monkey, half man, though no tails, so half ape, half man.
Absolutely. See, I consider the world as a genetic lab of the Supreme, of the God. You know, it was a genetic lab. I mean, nature was creating entities left, right, and center.
Yeah. Nature is definitely a genetic lab, that's for sure. Whether somebody's operating it or whether that's just the way nature is that, well, I guess that's the eternal question, isn't it? And it's certainly not one that this guy is going to be able to answer. For sure. And by this guy, I mean me. I'm not going to even... Yeah.
Likewise.
Well, as expected, somebody who Jim refers me to is another humble genius who says, I'm not an expert, but knows everything, even when I ask about Atlantis and Lemuria and all that. You have examples in cities and underwater, archaeology and things like that to point to. So he does not disappoint. You do not disappoint. If you are willing, I'm going to love to schedule a show with you on, I don't know how you say this, but on Hinduism and some of the tenets of his Hinduism. And I'm sure, like any other religion, there is the more metaphysical or spiritual or mystical elements of Hinduism, just like there's Kabbalah and Judaism and numerology and everything. Obviously, you're very familiar with numerology and astrology, so I'd love to explore all those things again with you. So you're cordially...
I'd love to be a part of it, sir.
Perfect. Well, for sure. And I'll work with you. I'll get in touch with you in a few weeks or a couple months, and we'll schedule down the road. Right now, for better, it's not for worse, it's for better. I'm stockpiling shows. I've been very successful in booking, but I need to start spreading some things out, because at some point I'll have a backlog that I'll never be able to release unless I stop doing the other show and release 2 Garden of Dooms a week, which is an option. But it's unlikely. The other show has its own little personality as well. It's sort of different. Anyway, I thank you so much. You said you were a musician, so if you want me to use any of your music as the outro, please feel free to send me something. I'll be happy to do it. Otherwise, I'll pick something that just sort of hits me, and I don't know what it'll be. I usually put in a few keywords in YouTube, and that hits song, and then I listen to anywhere between 1 to 15 songs and decide which one feels right. And which one is no more than 4 minutes. So that's sort of my parameters. But if you have one, I'm happy.
I'm happy to share some of my songs with you. Just take a listen.
And so, folks, whatever the outro is going to be, we now know who to credit to. It's to Ajit Panabab. I'm sorry.
No worry.
Is there anything that people can do to support you or follow you, or are you just an entrepreneur who happens to have a whole lot of interests and I'm going to call it expertise? You don't have to.
Oh my God! So first of all, thank you for having me here. It's an absolute honor. It's an absolute pleasure, and I'm grateful to Jim for giving this recommendation in the first place. Right?
Me too.
In order to support maybe about my music. You could just share those links or, whatever. It's called worldwideweb.com because I'm fascinated by wide. I call myself worldwideweb.com. It's a fun internet also. And of course, I'm an entrepreneur at who we are. So I would love to cover global areas of ancient significance. Right. For now, we are focused on India.
Perfect. All right. That's amazing. Thank you so much for that. Everyone check out his stuff and support him, and buy his music and check out his webpage and his business and see what's going on there. I can't thank you enough. Folks, if you can share the show with your friends and refer it to other people, that's great. I'd like to expand to other countries, so I expect that we're going to get more listeners in India and in the neighboring countries in the region. So check out some of the old shows and if anyone out there has expertise in your areas or this area, you have counter views, contact me. I'm pretty accessible. I'm on WhatsApp. I'm on Twitter at IcarusFellMD. Garden of Doom has a Facebook page. It's not a group, but it's a page, but you can message me, and I'm on Facebook, under my name, no pseudonym or anything like that. So I'm easy to find. But rate, review, 5 stars if you please. Write a review. It's great. It really helps with the algorithm. And thanks again to our guest. And we will hear you again next week at Garden of Doom. I don't know what the song is yet, but again, all credit to Ajib. It's his original music. So if you like it, and I'm sure you will, support his stuff. All right. Thanks very much for listening, and check you next week.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you.
Bal Gangadhar Tilak was a very important and revered spiritual and political leader of India from 1880 to 1920. He was also a mathematician, astronomer, historian, journalist, and philosopher. In his book, The Arctic Home in the Vedas, Tilak theorized that the North Pole was the original home of the legendary Aryans, and that during the pre-glacial period, some relocated. In support of his theory, Tilak points to certain Vedic hymns, Avestic passages, Vedic chronology, and calendars, which all describe ancient Aryan migrations from the Arctic to Northern Europe and Asia, and later into India. last ice age, you clearly can see that the climate changed very abruptly and catastrophically.